for organizations who are just starting to digitalize, I'll call it now, what are some of the things we want to stay away from? What are some of the mistakes we want to avoid that you have seen companies stumble into in your experience?
So the first one is around RFPs, and working to make sure that they're done appropriately. Again, I'm speaking to a broad audience here. Like when you're a big company, you've got a disciplined process there, and then you have procurement help to go through that. If you're a small direct seller, you've got to rely on someone to help you there, and you can't just take one company and assume that that company is going to just be able to help you with the things you're looking for. You've got to put the discipline behind getting a minimum of 3 bids and understanding exactly what the strengths and weaknesses are. So you build a scorecard, and that scorecard and criteria really help you make that decision. So I would highly recommend when you go through that you have a neutral third party that assists you in that process, that you might make the right decision. Otherwise, you're going to be backed into a corner on a bad decision that you'll find in a few years will be very difficult to unwind from. The second point is really an important one too, which is that when you bring on a new technology vendor, or frankly, even a new consultant or company, take the time, even though it's a very difficult thing to do from a patient's perspective, to onboard them appropriately so that they can really understand the differences in direct selling. Time and time again, I saw us bring on new vendors and expected them to just understand things immediately. I mean, I can speak from firsthand experience of when I moved from the retail environment to direct selling, it took more than a year and a half to truly understand the differences, and great ideas that I thought at the time were that were going to be game changers were just horrible ideas. And it wasn't until later that you realized why. And so it's a very, very important point to make sure, because it's hard to pinpoint the differences in direct selling, but to have it well articulated ahead of time is a big deal. And then the third thing is to make sure to include a tech provider in your architecture design, not just the solution implementer. So what I mean by that is, no matter what, like if you hire a company and they're an agency, I'm talking small now, right? To build your solution, you're going to need to make sure that the solution provider, the technology provider, so in this small instance, it might be Shopify, is literally part of that constant ongoing transformation. And then on a large side of things, it could be an example of, like, you selected Salesforce or Hybris, so SAP is like the vendor. You can want them to have skin in the game too, not just to hire a solution implementer, the various different ones out there, and just rely on them to get it done too. Like, it's the fox watching the hen house. And so at the end of the day, that's good tips that I would provide to anybody looking to take this kind of stuff on.
I really like all three of those, but even that second one that you talked about, onboarding these vendors who, might not be familiar with direct selling. I would say even those vendors who are in the industry, that onboarding, that including them in, as you said, design, but even before that, what's the objective and the strategy behind why you brought them, to the party? Because that, I'll tell you, we were just, working with one of those providers that exists in the industry the other day to partner with them, and to get their head wrapped around what the client wanted to accomplish took a while.
Yeah, like I'll build on it a tiny bit too, and use an example. So I'm working right now with a medium-sized direct seller, and they're shifting their strategy so that their mix is going to be a little more weight towards direct to consumer. But they still have to know the nuances of direct selling, otherwise it's going to be problematic in the long run. And so where it got very complicated was that the best practice in that specific environment and ecosystem was going to be to use a direct-to-consumer loyalty provider in the Shopify ecosystem. But the problem with that is that then you then have to take a step back and look at, by doing that, how do you make the necessary business decisions internally to be able to keep that loyalty program flowing the way it's intended and designed, but still to follow the requirements that you get from direct selling. And that really does take a lot of thought. And so the point there is that you can't just go blindly into it. You've got to have people within your own company that are very familiar with and curious around how that could work. Otherwise, you'll end up at the end of the day creating the same program you had, and that's not a good thing either.